You may have noticed while watching The Matrix Resurrections that the actor portraying the character of Agent Smith is not the actor from the original three movies. And yes, this is a rebooted version of The Matrix by the analyst, so that's why Agent Smith takes up a different avatar. But you may be surprised to learn that in the original script for The Matrix Resurrections, the actor that was going to play Agent Smith was the original actor from the first three movies, Hugo Weaving. What happened? Why didn't Hugo Weaving return? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, the Viking. Make sure you give a thumbs up and subscribe for all of the latest Matrix videos. But in The Matrix Resurrections, Agent Smith is played by Jonathan Groff and not the original actor in Hugo Weaving. But in terms of storyline and plot, this makes sense. The analyst who created this new Matrix, it's basically a rebooted simulation of the Matrix. So everything within the Matrix has gotten an upgrade and looks completely different from the first three movies, hence why Agent Smith looks different. It's an upgrade, and he's played by Jonathan Groff. That's what happened in terms of the storyline for the movie, but in real life, as to why Hugo Weaving didn't return, it was for something completely different. But Hugo Weaving as the character of Agent Smith for me is iconic, and the rivalry between Neo and Agent Smith was fantastic. It was mind-blowing to watch, especially the action sequences, which were choreographed to perfection. But if you go back to Matrix 1, Thomas Anderson inside of the Matrix was awoken by Morpheus and Trinity. If you go to The Matrix Resurrections, he is awoken by Bugs and Morpheus. But something that stays very similar between the old trilogy, the original trilogy, and this new film is that Agent Smith is awoken by Neo, Thomas Anderson. Without Neo, there would be no Agent Smith, and without no Agent Smith, there would be no Neo. They build each other up to eventually the power that they get. So I very much find that compelling. And Agent Smith, yes, in Matrix 1 was a villain, but as the movies have go on, his character has fully fleshed out. He has more awareness of who he is, of what he wants, and he has awoken. And in The Matrix Resurrections, when he awakes again, his mission is to stop the analyst, very much how Neo and Trinity's mission was to stop the analyst as well, because for the last 60 years in this new rebooted version of the Matrix, Agent Smith was under control, very much how he was under control in Matrix 1, and he did not like that whatsoever. So he wanted to find the analyst and kill him once and for all, so Agent Smith, just like Neo and Trinity, could be free. But Agent Smith could return in Matrix 5, probably with Jonathan Groff playing the character. Will he be a good guy or a bad guy or somewhere in the middle? It's very hard to know right now, but Agent Smith definitely has a mission, he has a goal, and I would love to see that in Matrix 5. But getting back to the point, in The Matrix Resurrections, Agent Smith was not supposed to be played by Jonathan Groff, but actually played by Hugo Weaving. This comes from Collider, and we get more information on this. The headline is, The Matrix Resurrections, Hugo Weaving was initially meant to return as Agent Smith. Whether or not you enjoy the performances of Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and Jonathan Groff in The Matrix Resurrections, it's still hard to imagine plugging back in without Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving donning the iconic mantles of Morpheus and Agent Smith once more. With regards to Weaving, it wasn't for a lack of trying. In a recent interview with Gizmodo, co-writers David Mitchell and Alexander Heeman revealed that Weaving had talks to return to The Matrix, but nothing ever came of it. According to Heeman, So we did write some roles. I'm not going to give it away, but we wrote a character for someone we thought would play it, and then it was not possible. And so still, we didn't change anything radically, but we were just imagining this actor in the role, and then it turned out that it was not possible. But we didn't change any lines with that. So that actor is still inscribed in the role. When pushed about whether that character was indeed Smith, Heeman revealed that they had talks with an actor presumed to be Weaving that ultimately fell true. Weaving himself earlier spoke about scheduling conflicts with Lon Wachowski that kept him out of the production. Clearly, the expectation was that the original Smith would come back for another round, and that sentiment was baked into the role that Groff inherited. The nature of the Matrix Resurrections, though, created an opportunity for Groff to plug in and create his own interpretation of the character that still pulls from Weaving's original depiction. The writers note that even had Weaving returned, it wouldn't necessarily be the same Smith, Heeman stated. Because the premise of the Matrix in this movie is somewhat different, Agent Smith would have been different in some ways, no matter who played it, and Jonathan Groff is amazing in that role. He added a dimension that I could not foresee while we were writing, but there's an increased emotionality in the movie, and then he fits into that pattern. In Collider's own interview with producer James McTeague, we asked the longtime Matrix producer what the presence of Smith in the Matrix Resurrections and just how close Weaving was to returning, and he further detailed the struggles of bringing actors back. There was always the Smith character in there. Hugo is a friend of both of ours of long standing. If we had a way of getting Hugo into the movie, we would have. But it didn't work out. That's just what happens in showmaking sometimes. Schedules can't work out. COVID was another curveball in the middle of it, obviously. It was a little more complicated than usual. In the end, it may have worked out for the better. Groff's new Smith played an ultimately different role in the film than he had as a direct arch enemy to Neo in the past. Groff did his best to exemplify that change while still keeping that sinister edge Weaving infused the character with from the start of the franchise. Still, it's clear that Weaving was always in the minds of the producers, writers, and the fans. So there you have it. That's the reason why Hugo Weaving didn't return as Agent Smith for the Matrix Resurrections. Scheduling conflicts, COVID. I did read before that Hugo Weaving was doing a play around the same time as the shoot for Matrix Resurrections. He probably couldn't travel with COVID, vaccinations, stuff like that. So he could not go back and forth from doing the play, which he had already said he would do, and then jump over into the Matrix Resurrections. It just wasn't possible whatsoever. I think that Jonathan Groff did a fantastic job as Agent Smith, but he wasn't given that much to do. I think he played the part of being Thomas Anderson's boss beautifully. I thought the action scene was good compared to the original movies. Not that good, but it was watchable. It was still enjoyable to see. And then near the end, where he helps Neo and Trinity, that was very satisfying, and he pulled that off very, very well. I would love to see him return for Matrix 5 now that he is free. I want to know what his next intentions is. But the elephant in the room, or the lack of elephant in the room, was Hugo Weaving's absence. For me, he's got such a screen presence. He made the first 3 Matrix movies. His scenes were just thought-provoking and eye-provoking. You just could not keep your eyes off him whatsoever because it was just the way he acted, the way he carried himself, his screen presence, the way he talked to Neo, the action sequences. It was just a really well done character, and Hugo Weaving was amazing. And Jonathan Groff had a huge uphill battle, but I think he did fantastically. I think he did very, very well in the role, but he's going to be compared to Hugo Weaving. Now, I think they did it well in terms of the story because it makes sense. It's a rebooted version of the Matrix, so therefore, the machines, the codes will be different. The entire Matrix is just completely different. But it would have been cool to see Hugo Weaving return, 100%. But maybe he still could down the line. What happens if the Matrix gets rebooted again to the original Matrix, or the one we got to see in the original movies, and then Hugo Weaving might be back? That would be interesting. It would be very interesting to see. I'm sure if they really wanted to do it, they could write it in some way. But Jonathan Groff, I think, should be given more time to explore the character and to make the character its own, because for me, in Resurrections, he was fine, but he didn't have that much to do. Jonathan Groff was Agent Smith and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II was Morpheus, but they didn't play the exact same characters. If you take Morpheus, for instance, he was kind of a code. He was programmed by Neo to be half Agent Smith and half Morpheus, because in the original trilogy, Morpheus awakens Neo, Thomas Anderson, and where Neo starts to believe is when he's fighting Agent Smith. So Neo, Thomas Anderson, he knew that, and he knew that he needed that if all of this was real, if his thoughts did exist about the previous trilogy being actual events in his life and not just games. He needed those two components to awaken and to be strong again in the Matrix Resurrections. Yes, Jonathan Groff was really playing Agent Smith, while Morpheus was kind of programmed to be Agent Smith. So I found that interesting in the movie big time, how Thomas Anderson, even though he was trapped in the Matrix, he still was able to figure out a way to kind of awaken himself. And he needed Agent Smith. He needed Morpheus. And I think that the two actors did very well. It's just they weren't playing the exact same interpretations of the characters at all. Morpheus, in real life, has died. And Agent Smith was kind of brainwashed, reprogrammed, rebooted in this new Matrix. So he couldn't remember his past awakenings in the previous Matrix movies. But I think they did fine, and I would love to see them return. But I would also love to see Lawrence Fishburne come back, see a prequel, because he was fantastic in the original trilogy as well. And his absence, and also the absence of Hugo Weaving, was felt in this movie big time. And something that I found interesting about this movie was, in the original trilogy, Neo had a physical threat in Agent Smith. In this movie, it was very different because it wasn't physical at all. Neo has been trapped, he's been experimented on, he's been drugged for 60 years. His mind has been tricked, and when he thinks that the Matrix games are actually something that he lived, he goes to his therapist, who is the analyst, who tells him, no man, you're a little bit crazy, you need these blue pills. And this film was more of a mental challenge for Neo, overcoming this obstacle. He even says, what if I can't be what I used to be? I think one of the crew members replied, then we all die. And he had that anxiety, that depression of not being good enough again, not being what he once was. So it was more of a mental thing for Neo. We all know he's the one, he's strong, he's powerful. But you can have all the strength in the world, all the power, all the speed, anything. You can have all of that stuff perfect. But if your head isn't right, then it's not going to come out, it's not going to work. And that's what Neo, Thomas Anderson, had to do in this movie. He had to get his head right first. He had to detox from the blue pill and then become the one. And he needed Bugs, he needed Morpheus, he needed the love of Trinity, he needed Agent Smith to do that. And I thought that was performed brilliantly in the movie, because it was a mental challenge for Thomas Anderson, not a physical one. And I'm sure going into Matrix 5 and Matrix 6, it will be more physical. We'll get the awesome action sequences that we got in the previous trilogy. But this movie, as I said before, was not about that. It was not being a replica of the previous movies. This was different. Lorne Wachowski decided to do something different in terms of what was the obstacle in front of Thomas Anderson. It was all mental for Neo, and that kind of resembles in the movie's villain, who was the analyst, who's not a physical threat, as you can see at the end of the movie, where Trinity absolutely beats the shit out of him. He's not physical whatsoever, he's all mental. And that's how he was able to control Neo through his mind, by giving him the blue pills, putting doubt in his mind. And he also did that to Trinity too. I'll do a special video on this, but the way that Neo was trapped in this new Matrix was very different from how Trinity was trapped. Neo was drugged, he was given the blue pill, he was given this kind of sense of doubt about himself, while Trinity did not take any blue pills whatsoever. The reason she was controlled was because the analyst gave her children, a husband, and responsibilities. And Trinity in the film questions, am I doing this because I'm supposed to, because I'm programmed to do this, or do I really want to be a mom? Do I really want to be a wife? And I found that very interesting. And that's the way that the analyst controlled her. He was all about the mind. But guys, thanks for watching this video. What's your thoughts on Hugo Weaving being in the original script for The Matrix Resurrections. They wanted him to come back, but it just didn't work out with COVID and scheduling conflicts. Would the movie have been better if Hugo Weaving was in it? Now, if you just place Hugo Weaving in the movie and take out Jonathan Groff, you wouldn't really notice that the character has changed that much, because Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith would have to play the boss of Thomas Anderson, and then he would awaken. There wasn't any kind of talk about, why do you look different in the film? So I think Hugo Weaving could have done the role perfectly, but Jonathan Groff stepped in, did very, very well when he had big shoes to fill. But I would love to see Hugo Weaving return. But it's now Jonathan Groff's turn, so if they do make a 5th movie, I want Jonathan Groff to return as well. Can they figure out? I'm not too sure, we'll have to see. But guys, let me know your thoughts below. Give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. New Matrix video is coming tomorrow, but I'm very intrigued to hear what you think of Hugo Weaving in the original script for Resurrections, but it didn't work out in the end. Pretty sad, but that's just the way it works.